So we'll use the other side, but you can study off the Roman numeral side, see?
You're not gonna cover it up though, right?
Oh, I'll take it away.
That's
See,
not
this
very
thing
nice.
comes in half like that. And the reason I have it in half is because cranial nerve 3, a student of mine found this for me. I had given up on it, but there's a little Roman numeral 3 right there. Cranial nerve 3 comes out right in between the pons and the midbrain. And this swollen part here is the pons. Okay, so, and it would be right on the midline. So I just wasn't thorough enough. This person had the thing in half and was looking inside and said, hey, look, I found it. And there's cranial nerve 3 right there, Roman numeral 3. So if I say what cranial nerve comes out there, you'll say cranial nerve 3. And what's the name of that? The oculomotor nerve, okay? Controls the medial rectus muscle, levator palpebrae superioris, the superior rectus muscle, and the inferior rectus muscle. It's everything you need to know about the oculomotor nerve. Okay, so I can put it back together now because we saw that one. My students are always showing me things. So, let's see here. So now it kind of, at least for starters, it's better to see both halves together, I think. And you see a nice view of the brainstem, the pyramidal tracts, the major motor tracts, the pons, and this little part that you can hardly see up in there is the midbrain. Okay, tucked up way up in there. And this down here is the medulla oblongata. And so you can see cranial nerve, there's a little Roman numeral 4 right there. And remember how cranial nerve comes from around the backside, the trochlear nerve. Okay, and so there you see it. They made a mistake and didn't show it over here. But you can see it coming around the backside, so if I could say name the cranial nerve that controls the superior oblique muscle. That's all it controls. So, okay. And then here's this great big one. It's really bigger than that. What one is that? Since I'm going in order, probably. Cranial nerve 5, the largest one. Trigeminal nerve, which has 3 branches, but of course, the branches aren't shown on any model that I've found. Okay. So we have a half head over here, but I doubt that any of it's on there. Might look again. So that's cranial nerve 5, and then so going back down here, we have a number of them over here, starting with the midline is cranial nerve 6. Anyone remember the name of that? Abducens. And abducens controls the lateral rectus muscle. So if you have a dysfunction of this nerve, what condition will you exhibit? Okay, well, you will lose muscle tone in the lateral rectus muscle, so yeah, you'll have internal strabismus. Just look at her, she'll do it for you, yeah. Okay, so, okay, and so that's number 6. Going over here is number 7. It's the facial nerve, which has 5 branches. What are they? It's got the temporal branch, the zygomatic branch, the buccal branch, the mandibular branch, and the cervical branch. Okay, remember the 5. Okay. And so that's, and of course, deep facial structures for the trigeminal, superficial facial structures for the facial. Okay? So that's number 7. Number 8 is the vestibulocochlear nerve, which is hearing in equilibrium. Okay? Meniere's disease is the result of dysfunction of this nerve. Okay? And remember, tic de la Rue, for the trigeminal and Bell's palsy. It's important to remember the diseases too. And so, so this is number 8, the vestibulocochlear. Anyone tell me what that one is? It's number 9, glossopharyngeal. Okay, both motor and sensory, and you'll have difficulty swallowing, and you'll lose some tastes with dysfunction of this. Cranial nerve 10 is the only one to leave the cranium and attaches to every major visceral organ in the abdominal cavity. Vagus, yep. So, and what's this one here? Accessory nerve controls the 2 major muscles of the neck. So head movement, okay. So, and finally, what's the name of that one? Hypoglossal. Cranial nerve 12, mostly motor, controls the tongue, its activity in chewing and in speech. So very important in speech. Okay. And it attaches undoubtedly to Broca's speech area of the brain, which controls all motor activity involved in speech, how we form our mouth, our vowels, and you know, the shape of the mouth when we say a word, and the movement of the tongue. So, okay, and sticking your tongue out. Yeah. So, okay? So, if it's an extra credit though, I won't point to the stubs, and of course if it's a nerve branch, I don't have a stub to point to. But I will try and give you good verbal, instructions, and I might, if it's an extra credit question, I might purposely leave something out, or not, but I'll show you pictures. Okay? But I won't show you nerve roots if it's extra credit. Those are kind of dead giveaways. I find that students do well on this quiz, so, which is good.
The one I'm gonna miss.
Well,
Come on.
What can I say? So any questions about any of that? Let's see, on the half head over here, let's see what we can dig up on that one. Oh, and I know why I pulled this out. So we don't see any branches of the trigeminal nerve inside there anywhere. So no such luck. But the superficial, a few superficial, and this is really quite poorly done, but that's got to be the temporal branch of the facial nerve. And this, they leave out the zygomatic branch, but that's probably the buccal branch of the facial nerve, and that's probably the mandibular branch. But I don't see any cervical branch down there. So if I ask you those, I'll have to show you some other picture. But I can use these 3, temporal, buccal, and mandibular.
Can you turn it for
Pardon?
camera?
Just
Yeah,
like
sure.
that. Do it one more time.
There you go.
Okay, temporal, buccal, mandibular, okay? So, good stuff. Okay, nice sort of introduction to central nervous system.
The inputs of the nerve.
Yeah. Okay, good nursing material too. Good nursing applications to this. Yeah. So, anything in the way of questions? A week from now, we'll start 6 o'clock sharp with the quiz, as you know.
So I have a
And,
question.
Question, yes ma'am.
On the syllabus. let me get
Oh, in the
to it.
syllabus, I put a revised syllabus on there that has the correct date for those holidays. The holidays are on Monday. Okay, so if you have a syllabus that has the incorrect date, also, I was also gonna show you, that,
What's the report sheet?
the what?
Report sheet?
Oh, the report sheet. On the syllabus, we have 2 dissections. and you'll turn in a report sheet for those dissections, and you'll get, if you fill them out diligently, you'll get 30 points. Easy 30 points, so. Yeah. And so that'll count as 2 of your lab grades. The upside to that is that everybody gets a 30. The downside is there's no extra credit, but what can I do? You know.
There's no extra credit on the.
There'll be extra credit in this, on these lab quizzes always, except for those. Yeah. And I just brought this up here because it's got the foramen ovale and the foramen rotundum. And remember how the semilunar ganglion sits up here and those branches go, maxillary branch goes through the foramen ovale. Pardon me, the maxillary branch, foramen ovale, the foramen rotundum, mandibular branch through the foramen ovale, and the ophthalmic branch goes through the supraorbital fissure. Okay? And the answer to that question was that this old adage that you should never supplement a substance that your body normally produces because the structure that normally produces it will atrophy and shrivel up. That only applies to substances whose release is governed by a negative feedback loop. Because if you give a substance whose release is mandated by a negative feedback loop, the structure that makes it will see high levels, and it'll say, due to negative feedback, it'll say, I don't have to make it. And so it'll get lazy, and if you don't use it, you'll lose it. But you see, the production of melatonin is not governed by a negative feedback loop. It's governed by daylight. It's governed by your circadian rhythm. And that's not a negative feedback loop. And so taking melatonin doesn't cause atrophy of the pineal gland. So because its release is not governed by a negative feedback loop. I've been waiting all vacation to tell you that.
I just
What
wondering that too.
about birth control?
That's an excellent question, Tony. I've just been waiting for someone to ask me about birth control hormones. Because after all, estrogen and progesterone are made on a monthly basis in the body according to negative feedback loops. But you see, the answer is to that, you're not doing any damage because they're not produced by the same cells every month. The estrogen and progesterone are produced by different cells every month. The cells, a few follicles mature, which is the fancy word for eggs, mature, about 15 follicles mature every month and start to secrete estrogen, and later on secrete progesterone. But then if they're not used, most of them degenerate, and the one that's used in a fertilization, they'll all be gone, is the point. And you'll have a new 15 the next month, and so it's a new 15 cells every month that produces the estrogen, so you don't have to worry about damaging them because you got new ones every month. So that's not governed by and the release of those hormones is to some degree governed by, in a very complex way, by negative feedback, a diabolical way, but you don't have to worry about it because it's a different cells every month. Whereas on the other hand, testosterone is produced by the same cells during the life of the individual, and supplementing testosterone, as people are essentially doing when they're taking anabolic steroids, they get testicular atrophy, loss of sex drive, and all sorts of severe symptoms dictated by negative feedback.
Isn't it commonplace now for older
Yes, and older males do supplement testosterone. I guess the logic, a lot of them do anyway, I guess the logic to that is that if the cells aren't producing as much as they should, maybe it doesn't hurt to supplement some. Of course, the risk that you run is stimulating prostate cells to become cancerous. You can create prostate cancer, and a lot of people who supplement testosterone, not a lot, but some wind up with prostate cancer that they wouldn't have had
Is that
If
why?
they hadn't done it, it's just like supplementing estrogen replacement therapy. Same thing, you could get breast cancer.
My father-in-law had prostate cancer and had it removed, but they gave him this experimental thing where they gave him shots once a month, and it was estrogen
Uh-huh.
to keep the prostate at bay. Is
Oh, that
why-
would work, oh, yeah, it helps.
And he kept telling us he's gonna grow boobs, but
Yeah.
over and over, it's disgusting, but yeah, it
Yeah,
keeps it at bay.
no,
for
that would
12
help.
years.
Yeah,
It made him cry a lot, I just have to say.
yeah.
He's okay.
But, and they have drugs called selective estrogen receptor modifiers, SERMs, that they give to folks who are at risk for breast cancer,
Oh, yeah.
that kind of turn off estrogen
The
receptors.
tamoxifen, right?
So they're not as responsive to estrogen.
Is that the same with the people that really severe allergies and have to carry those EpiPens with them, or will those?
Well, that's just has to do with acute anaphylactic allergic reaction.
But do they run a risk of not making enough epinephrine?
Oh, no, a one-time dose is not gonna do any damage. It's just chronic use. Yeah, so like giving chronic use of steroidal anti-inflammatories, chronic use of testosterone, getting a one-time shot of testosterone would hurt you, or estrogen.
You look good.
It's just chronic use of these things that causes atrophy of these organs we've been talking about. But if if release of the substance isn't governed by negative feedback, then it's no harm done. So, yeah, right. Yeah, good stuff.